Hi guys, welcome back to the Improvement Season podcast. It is me, Steve Hall, on the other end, my man, Mike Challis. We had no jingle. I still haven't found a jingle just yet, but it will come at some point. But guys, we're back. Sorry for the pause on or rather, no episode last week. Hope everyone had an amazing Easter. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that. And that was my bad. I basically just had too much too soon come on. And I was like, Mike, I could really do with this hour and a half to kind of do this work because, the work doesn't go away. You just have to do it in less time. And so that's why there wasn't one last week. So we appreciate your patience, particularly me. I apologize. But Mike, how are things?
Good. I was going to say, I didn't have time to mention it before we jumped on, but I was going to say, as a punishment, you've got to do the jingle and sing Backstreet Boys. Everybody, we're back.
I don't even know the lyrics to. I'm terrible with lyrics. I know the lyrics to one song and that's it, or some of the lyrics to one song. But Backstreet Boys are back. Oh dear, that's such a. I never enjoyed that sort of pop music. Was that something you enjoyed, Mike? No, it wasn't. Okay.
Well, do you know
Oh,
what?
was it?
In a weird way, I did like it a little bit. Slash, yeah. And I remember.
Slash, that you were a fan and you went to concerts.
Do you know what? Here's another fun fact about me. I've never been to a music concert ever. So
That
yeah.
doesn't surprise me a whole lot. I gotta be honest. I have, but not from my own choosing. Normally, it's because I've been invited to go along with other people. I did go to not Glastonbury, but it was something similar to a Glastonbury once, and I absolutely despised it. It's not for me at all. I I know people love music, and some people can appreciate the different notes and tones and hear the lyrics, and I don't know, it means a lot to them. For me, it's just like I hear beats in my head and I'm just like, oh, I like that beat. I have no idea what they're singing about or what it's about. I just like the tunes and the feeling it's giving me. Not enough to go to a concert out of choice.
Exactly. And so I've never been, so I always, it's hard to know whether you're just telling yourself this story or not. And I probably can't say because I've never been, but I kind of have an intuitive feeling that it's not something that is my vibe, and particularly because, and again, people will probably disagree with me, but when you listen to a song on your headphones, the quality is so good. And then when you go live, it's just not quite the same because they might have their throat might be hurting and so they don't hit the notes quite as well and blah blah blah. And I always thought, oh, it never quite sounds as good. But obviously you go there for the atmosphere and the experience. But I don't care about that as much. But yeah, I don't know.
The only way I can compare it to is watching live sport on TV versus being there. And obviously, we actually went to a basketball game, and we can vouch for how much different it is being there in the crowd and part of that atmosphere. And particularly the US, the Americans do it very well.
Mm.
But I've been to many a football game, and it is very, very different. And yeah, you might not get to see the game even as well because the cameras can follow them and you see it easily on your screen. But the atmosphere there, some people really enjoy that, some people don't. When I was younger, I hated it because I was like complete introverts, kind of almost like scared of all this loud noise and everything. Whereas now, if I could go to a football game, I'd definitely prefer to see it live than watch it on TV. I don't know how you are for live sport. Do you enjoy live sport? Like being there, I mean.
Do you know what? This is controversial, but I'm not a sport person in general. So I
But just
don't.
compared to watching, being at the basketball
Oh,
game versus watching it on TV.
definitely live. I definitely prefer I definitely prefer live over versus watching on telly for sure.
You just like reading your Stoic books.
I do, I
Like
do.
a librarian.
And just
Just
like a
picture it
little,
now.
yeah, that's me. I'm just a librarian at heart. I like books. That's it,
On that
But
note, what's on your reading list at the moment?
well, Marcus Aurelius Meditations. I'm reading a little passage of that in the morning. And then sometimes I'll flip through a page of Lao Tzu, the Tao Te Ching, in the evening before I just nip off to bed. But I'm not reading like a hard book at the moment because then I'll watch an episode or two of anime in the evenings when I'm having my dinner. And that's all I'm doing at the moment.
If you were to tell me you just watched one episode, man, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if someone likes anime if they only watch one episode. I'd be like, that's 20 minutes. Like it's
What, per
just gone like
day?
in a flash.
I
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah.
true.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would hope that someone, I suppose you have other things you can switch off to. Maybe I've got my life in a position where I am like that, but I say that all of that. By the time I've walked Ada, cooked the food, sat down to eat it, maybe get an episode of something, which is an hour, I would say. Normally get about an episode in of a program. That's 3 anime episodes, though, which is good.
Yeah. And that's what I generally get through, 2 to 3 anime episodes per night.
Yeah, that makes sense. What are you watching at the moment, then?
I'm still on Naruto.
Oh, I thought you'd finished it for some reason. What was the last episode you were watching? Whereabouts are you?
Oh, so it's the 4th Shinobi World War. And basically, we're in the stage now where Kabuto has kind of almost mastered the reanimation jutsu. And he's brought back Nagato and Itachi. And Itachi's had this little connection with Naruto and explained all about, like, his Mangekyo Sharingan and getting over, you know, certain traps and stuff. So, and Naruto's like starting to realize like he can't do everything on his own. And it's like that realization of like, hey, you have to, you know, work with your friends and be a team sort of thing.
When the crow comes out of his mouth, I was
That's
just like,
it.
what the fuck? Itachi just thinks of everything, or at least
I know.
you know the writers obviously just wrote it that way, but it was it just makes him the GOAT, you know, when he does things like that.
I was like, how did he think of this? Like,
Just
he's
like
so wise, and he's supposed to be like, he's still relatively young as well, theoretically. I think he's not.
Yeah,
he wasn't like
wasn't
super
old. He was just unwell. Like he had some sort of sickness. I wanted them to bring back. I don't know what happens in Boruto, but I wanted them to bring back Jiraiya to see what happened there. But obviously, he never got brought back. I don't know what happened there, but very cool. That's where you're at. What am I watching at the moment? I tried a little bit of dan da da dan da da dan da 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 da. People who watch anime will know it's like what it's called. That's like the start of it. It's very weird. I don't know if I like it or not. It's super duper weird, like really weird. I don't even know how to describe it without spoiling it, or like it's just weird. I'll put it that way. And then what else have I been watching? I can't even remember what it's called. It's on Netflix, Life of Sakamoto or something like that. People listening who know what it is, they're going to be like, Steve, you can't remember the name of it's this. But that one actually has been quite fun. It was like a retired secret agent, basically. And he's on like, people are trying to kill him. And he's still badass, but he's like overweight and like retired or whatever. So that's quite fun. But nothing I've like sunk my teeth into in terms of like something I'm really enjoying. It's nice when you have one that you really sink your teeth into.
Is there anything like Celebrity Get Me Out of Here or anything like that at the moment that you're kind of just watching with Charlotte?
What did we just finish? Oh, we just finished The Apprentice. That just finished.
Nice.
So that was good. It's always fun watching that. And we've just started, what's it called? Married at First Sight, Australia. It's always fun watching those and just being like predicting whether or not it's going to work or not for the couples. And I mean, most of them don't work, so it's quite an easy bet. But that's what we've been watching of an evening, which is nice. And actually, recently, she's like doing this thing at work. I've realized what motivates her is being part of like a competition and gamifying things. So she's part of like a group at work for steps, who can get the highest step count at the end of the week. And so she's been doing way more. She's been using this walking pad. Actually, I haven't used it since prep ended, but she's been using it sometimes to like get her steps up and stuff. And that means also she's been coming home a little bit earlier. So we actually had a meal together yesterday, which was nice. So that'll be happening a little bit more. Versus you know what, it is nice. I also don't care. Like I do enjoy food, but a lot of most of the time I'm very functional with it. I'm just like, I need to eat my fruit and veg. It needs to taste pretty good, but I'm pretty happy eating the same thing over and over again. But yeah, it was nice to have fajitas. We had like vegan fajitas, which was nice, and it's a solid meal. My fiber just goes wild because what did we get? We had Weight Watcher wraps, just because Charlotte was like, can we get some lower calorie wraps so I can have more of them? They're actually really decent, like 100 calories, but they have like 4 grams of fiber per one. I had 3. And then we had like soy fake meat, and then the fiber in that per 100 grams, I don't know what it is, but it's like 10 grams or something.
Stupid.
Yeah, and then you have avocado, you have onions, you have peppers, you have all of that, and the fiber just started getting wild. And I already have a lot of fiber in the day, so I think my fiber was up at like 70 grams. So I was just like, might be why I weigh a little bit heavier this morning and feel a bit blocked up.
Do you know what? That's one of the reasons that I don't like, again, going for the vegan alternatives, because the fiber is ridiculous. And I know that I'll just feel a bit off from a digestive perspective if I go a bit too ham on them.
Yeah, that's a big reason I don't have too much of them, at least, and just try and incorporate a little bit here or there. Like, we only had 100 grams, which was like 20 grams of protein. And I just had, what did I have on the side? A boiled egg, like a large boiled egg. I was like, I'll just get a bit more protein in via this without it. But yeah, I think vegans, if there's any listening, from my experience of working with people who have been vegan for an extended period of time, they accommodate, like, you get used to the high fiber intake. So I don't know. I definitely can deal with more fiber now than I could at the end of prep. Now, my fiber, if it goes a bit higher, I seem to be dealing with it fine. I think part of that is also your digestion just goes a bit in the shitter when you're in prep. It doesn't matter what you really do. It's just always like it's not the most efficient and in the best position possible for a bunch of reasons, probably physiological reasons when you are in that kind of energy depleted state. So, but yeah, how was your Easter? So you were like busy in an Airbnb and moving, and what's happened on that front?
Yeah, so nothing much. I mean, I moved out of, so I was renting a flat, and I had to move out on the Sunday, the 20th of April. So I ended up just, do you know what? I just outsourced it, because, you know, I could have done it myself, but there was a few pieces of furniture which I needed to dismantle. And you know what? I was like, do you know what? I'm not a DIY person. I'm not naturally gifted on that front. And I thought, just to save myself time, stress, I'm just going to outsource it to a delivery removals people.
Makes sense.
And it helped so much. They came in, they had their own boxes, they had their own everything, and they literally just almost did everything. And it was great. So that really helped a ton. And then I moved into the Airbnb. And then, so I'm in an Airbnb at the moment, but unfortunately the Wi-Fi is just not great. So I have to work on my coaching days today, I have to work from the clinic, which is fun, which I'm lucky enough to be able to do that. So, yeah. So we're in an Airbnb. I might be in another Airbnb next week. But it's just one of those things where I've just got to be adaptable and not stress out about it, go with the flow, and then it'll all be okay.
Have you got your stuff in storage then?
Yes.
Yeah, smart. That makes sense. And I agree with you in regards to, like, it's like loads of things. We have a cleaner that comes every 2 weeks, because it's just like, I was really against getting a cleaner before we got a cleaner, but Charlotte was like it just makes sense. And I was an Ernie as well, and she was an Ernie as well many years ago when we didn't have one, but now it's like per hour we're better off just doing more work than we are spending time cleaning. And of course, if you enjoy that sort of thing, like, fair enough. If you want to do that, like DIY projects at home, if you like painting and so on and so forth, and maybe you have, I don't know, those skills passed down from your dad or mum who was into it as well, great. I just don't. I have no interest in it, so I would have outsourced that as well. They have all the right tools and they're very efficient and they can get it done way quicker than you, and you can spend time on other things. But yeah, I guess so long as you're financially in a fine place, Mike, you can at least just enjoy, I don't know, being in different environments and try and see the positives, and I'm sure you will, of being in different Airbnbs and what they have available to you.
Well, do you know what? That was the funny thing, because sometimes you can't always tell from the pictures exactly what the dimensions of things are like. I walked in and honestly, they have this huge living room. Well, it's huge compared to what I'm used to. And I just walked in and I was like, oh, wow, this is huge. And so I'm living in a place that's like nice, cozy. There's this king size bed that I'm sleeping in at the moment. So I'm like, oh, this is actually quite nice. So yeah, you're absolutely right. There are definitely some positives at the moment.
with when are you due to move? Do you have a like have you handed over anything, or it hasn't completed yet?
It's not completed yet, but I got a provisional completion date for the 2nd of May.
Okay.
So next week. So maybe kind of not this weekend, next weekend, I might be able to move in if things go well.
Damn, that's an unfortunate timing with our event.
Exactly. And I was thinking the exact same thing. You know,
At least maybe you get the Saturday.
yeah, so I might be able to move in on the Saturday and then go from there. I thought it's so ironic, isn't it? Because we literally tried to plan it so I'd have plenty of time to have moved in, get settled, and then we'd have the meet up. It's just not worked out like that at all. But that's the way life goes.
Yeah, that is the way life goes. It's like, this is where you say typical. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, of course, that's how it's going to go. Actually, on that note, we've got someone signed up actually to come to it today. So we've got a good group of us. We've got, I think, including you and me, we've now got 8 of us there, which will be nice
Awesome.
in the cut gym. But there's still space available.
Yeah.
I think I've said before we were looking to get up to 20. That would have been like definitely on the high end. A group of 10 would be amazing. So if a couple of people want to come and join us, there's still spaces available for that. And
Nice.
as a reminder of what it is, in the morning, we'll take you through training. So me and Mike aren't training. We're going to be hands-on with you, taking you through whatever training you want, whether that's your program, you can join other people for their program, or we can design you a brutal session to get through. It will probably be brutal unless you want us to put you through a deload session, but I doubt you do. We can work on technique, intensity. You can ask us any questions during that period of time. With a break for lunch, post-workout, chill, and then me and Mike will be doing a presentation each for about 45 minutes. My presentation is on, I've actually forgotten the title of it, which is terrible. What's your title, Mike? Do you remember yours?
So my title is all about how to understand the messages of pain and how to stop niggles from turning into timeout from training injuries.
I remembered your topic. I know my topic generally, but yours was really easy. It was like navigating niggles and injuries as a bodybuilder, essentially, which I think is going to be super valuable because injuries take you out of the gym. And if you can nip it in the bud sooner rather than later, like that's going to be super invaluable. But I wanted to get my title right because I liked the title. I just couldn't remember it offhand. So mine is The Real World Roadmap to Getting Jacked Beyond the Theory. So I guess the premise of that is, a lot of us understand the X's and O's, the kind of textbook information, but that's not the same as what it looks like in practice. So I'm going to be talking through some case studies to kind of get that understanding for people. So if you're a coach, great, you can apply that to your clients, but you can apply that knowledge to yourself as well. So I'm excited to, present that. And then we're going to have, after those have been presented, we'll have time for Q&A and then a dinner in the evening of some sorts for whoever wants to come and join. So it'll be great for like education, but also quite fun. There's not going to be a huge number of us, so it'll be really fun, interactive. You have time to ask all the in-depth questions you want and be part of just a fun group of individuals. Like people have made lifelong friends from these sort of events. In fact, a lot of the people I ended up like having on the Revive Stronger team or being coached by myself, what have you, are people I met at seminars. So even with Cliff, for example, who coached me, it was like, hey, we had a seminar together, and that kind of got me very much like bought into him as a person and everything. So there's definitely something about that one-on-one connection. So it's on the 4th of May, and I forget the exact timings, but in the morning from about 10, I believe, until about 3 or so. But we'll have a link in the description kind of going over it all. And if you have any questions, just drop me or Mike a DM over on Instagram and we'll get back to you. But yeah, plug out the way. I don't know if you had anything else to add, Mike.
No, guys, come. It's that conversation in between. So it's not just about always the presentations. It's those conversations and connections between those moments that are just invaluable. Like you said, it leads to so many opportunities later down the road. So yeah, if there's anyone listening on the fence, just do it. Do it.
Definitely if you're on the fence. If you can be there, you've got the finances and you're like nervous or uncertain, like we are the most chill individuals. I've also been there going to seminars when I was like, this is way out of my comfort zone when I started in the industry. Actually, I just had it's like 7 years ago or maybe more than that, a like memory on Facebook, and it was a picture. And it was me with James Krieger, Alan Aragon, Brett Contreras, and there was one other person there. Oh, Brad Schoenfeld. So, and it was a seminar that was in Bath, and I just went there on my own. I didn't know anyone really, and like that was pivotal to some of the podcasts I've done, having met those individuals and getting to know them, and so they're willing to come on the podcast. So yeah, these sort of things, so valuable, and just like getting out of your comfort zone a little bit. And in this day and age where, you know, everything's available online and you interact online all the time, it's just great to connect in real life. So yeah, I'm excited for that. So that's it's come really quick, actually, surprisingly quick. So yeah,
Can you believe we're in May already?
Oh, dude. Yeah, oh, wait, we're not in May.
Not yet, but we will be soon.
Don't take time away from me. Yeah, a month tomorrow will be my birthday, and I'll be freaking 35. God damn it. Then I start feeling I'm like on this, like I'm closer to 40 than I am 30, and I'm like, no, that's old. No, that's starting to get to a point where I feel like I shouldn't be wearing and watching anime and tattooed with it. No, I'm joking. It's completely fine. It's for adults. It's fine. I guess briefly I'll touch on, I was away over the weekend for Easter. Not much to say. People who follow me and have for a while know we always go down to Cornwall for that weekend, and it's actually like the whole weekend's great. The thing I really appreciate from it is getting out into nature and being on my phone less, and just realizing the world is fine without like checking your phone all the time and getting back to messages immediately. And yeah, just being able to be out there in nature and kind of the sea and hear the waves and all of that's really nice. The first night of sleep is just the worst, and the travel. They're the only negatives of it. Otherwise, it's fantastic. It gets me also out of my comfort zone with trying some different foods. I say trying different foods, it's just eating them because I've tried them before, but it makes me have like some fish and chips and like a Cornish pasty and maybe something Charlotte's mum has made in terms of like a dessert or something.
Did you, because you said obviously you're fairly functional with your food, do you kind of, like if you're seeing something like a Cornish pasty, do you not kind of like care about it? You're like, I have to kind of eat this socially with Charlotte or whatever, but I don't really care much for this Cornish pasty or fish and chips.
Yeah, pretty much. Like I'm like, I know these things are nice, but I'd actually probably prefer to eat my normal functional meal, but I'll be social. I'll take the opportunity to try this thing. It's similar to, like, I like going and trying different gyms. I like going on holiday, but I really love my day-to-day routine. So I like it. It's just that balance. Like, I couldn't have a Cornish pasty every day. I couldn't have it every week. But once or twice a year, of course I'm going to freaking have it, unless I'm in a diet phase or whatever. So, yeah, it's good. Like, Charlotte's mum just buys us them. So it's just like, I couldn't not have it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, yeah, actually, I had it last time we were there over Christmas, and I was still very close to stage, like a month post-show. And all I did was, it was the same thing, but I just chopped off, like, Cornish pasties, for anyone who doesn't know what they are. They're basically like they're almost like a calzone, if people know calzones. It's like fried pastry with like a filling, and they have a really big crust, almost like a crust of a pizza, but it's very dense. And so I just chopped that crust off and saved myself like 300 calories worth of just delicious like pastry, but it was fine. Like it made it work in that scenario. So you can do things like that. And I think last time I was down, we had fish and chips again, and I just like took off a lot of the batter and didn't eat it, and had a smaller portion of chips. Whereas this time I was like, hey, no, I can eat most of that batter. I took off a little bit because I didn't need all of it, and I had some chips. But yeah, proper coastal fish and chips are really good. Like, very nice. But again, it's not something I would eat on the regular basis. Pizza for me, though, is that like kind of a bit more of an in-between, where like I find it to be a bit more functional, at least the way all the pizzas I eat, because I don't go for loads of fatty meats. And I enjoy it enough where it's worth it to me to be more part of my process, if that makes sense.
Totally. And that's exactly what I thought of when you were talking about that. I was thinking, I wonder if Steve feels the same way about pizza. But yeah, more of an in-between. Makes total sense.
It's like, sorry, just as a side note, like I could do like Subway regularly, something tasty that's functional. Or what did we do? We had a takeaway from a local place, a Mexican, and we did a burrito. Again, similarly, that can be very, you can pick and choose what you put in there. It can be very functional, tasty, kind of fits the bill on both fronts. So I do like, it's funny, as people that care about their macros as well as the taste of food, you can kind of weigh foods a little bit differently to how just like what's most delicious, regardless of macros, be like cheesecake, something like that, right? But you need it to be functional as well. And then you might pick something a bit more like, I can't name something offhand, but like a, I don't know, really good protein bar or something. Terrible comparison, but you know what I mean, or like a Ninja Creamy or something, you know.
Yeah, it's
something like that.
I don't know if this is too off topic, but because you think of food the way that you do, and more kind of coming from a functional aspect, makes it think it does set you up perfectly for being a bodybuilder in that sort of sense. And how
Chicken or egg, though, I don't know.
True. That's
I
again
probably do
good
know.
point.
I think I only think about it this way because of bodybuilding.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
have think about it this way otherwise.
But I imagine when you started bodybuilding, right at the beginning, you were kind of way over to like, right, it's all about bodybuilding. I'm not going to be flexible enough to adapt myself to family and situations. But now you've become so much more adaptable and flexible. And maybe it's not your preference, but it doesn't cause you any mental burden or stress necessarily anymore compared to what it used to do. And so you're kind of coming much more to that middle ground.
Yeah, for sure. Something I want to trial sometime. It's similar. I was actually using this analogy or comparison with a client. He was finding tracking really stressful. And what I hadn't realized what he was doing was he kind of had a bit of a black and white relationship with tracking, whereas either he's tracking everything to the point where he's weighing out, I don't know, things that just don't really require being weighed out, like some bananas and apples and vegetables during his gaining phase. It's just not necessary. And also not eating foods that he'd have to estimate because of inaccuracies. So maybe not having his mum's meals and he'd bring his own food potentially. So stuff that you need to do in prep, like towards the end, but it aren't really sustainable habits long term. And that would lead him to burnout. So he'd end up having days where he just wouldn't track at all. And we kind of wanted to avoid that. So I dug into it a bit and we discussed ways of making tracking less. Sorry, I've got this like thing at the back of my throat now. Less stressful for him. So like being more able to guesstimate low calorie items, not worrying about weighing those out, more able to estimate meals that his mum made him or something like that. Things like this. Sorry, it's like I've come across something that's suddenly led to me having like an allergic reaction. It's closing up my throat.
Well, you grab a bit of water, Steve, but I think related to that, I found that using ChatGPT, which you put me onto as well, is really useful for helping give you a bit of a guesstimation so you don't need to rigidly track and you can just have a rough ballpark for, hey, I know this apple is X, so I'm not going to worry too much about tracking it rigidly. I know it, and you can kind of factor that in.
Hopefully the throat will be okay now. But yeah, you're right. ChatGPT is great for that, where you can upload photos to it, because in the past I've had clients like send me photos of meals and be like, my estimation is this. What do you think, Steve? And I've tried to like educate them on being able to guesstimate, but now you can just use a ChatGPT. And often I used it initially where I estimate in my head of what I thought it was. Then I take a photo, send it across to ChatGPT, and I was always in the ballpark. We're very much aligned, and it gives you ranges. You can also give it more information or less information. The more information you give it in terms of what you're estimating is helpful for it to kind of get it right, because yeah, I don't know. It's like anything. If the more data it has, the more knowledge it has to be able to give you a more precise figure. So yeah, actually he was using like ChatGPT to help him guesstimate some of his mum's dishes and things. And we've also given him 1 day of mindful eating. So not tracking, but just eyeballing and just like going by hunger cues and stuff like that. And he finds that to be really rejuvenating for him. And that's something I was going to say, to use the comparison between that and social media. Whereas like, I don't think being on social media is highly stressful to me at all. And I quite enjoy it. But when I do have days where I'm completely removed from it, or like weekends or holidays, I really see the benefit of having not been involved in it. And I think that might be the same for like tracking. I don't find tracking particularly stressful. In fact, it can be somewhat de-stressing. But I do wonder if I could take opportunities to just like take a whole day to mindfully eat, especially like if I'm on holiday or something like we were in the Maldives. Like just take some of those days or some of those meals, not to like log it, and just kind of be mindful about what I'm doing and seeing how that goes. So that's something I want to try.
Mm. So it reminds me of, like, sometimes you might think, oh, I don't need a rest day, I can keep training. You have a rest day and you go back to the gym and you feel much better, and like, oh no, I can see the value of this rest day now, kind of thing.
Yeah, you don't know what you haven't tried, right? So it comes back to the thing at the start, doesn't it? You need to go see some music live, Mike.
Yeah. Oh no, no. Can someone go with me, please? I don't want to go on my own.
Oh, you can definitely go with someone, not me though, because I've done it and I don't like it.
And on that note, actually, I've got even less of an excuse. This is going to sound even worse. So when I was growing up, I grew up in a place called Reading, and Reading is also well known for the Reading Music Festival. So I literally had the music festival on my doorstep, and I never ended up going. So
Were you invited though?
no.
Did people, your friends, go? No. I imagine if your friends went, you might have gone along.
Then my friends went, but I was never like, Mike, come along. It was kind of like, if I wanted to go, then I would have had to have had a strong urge to have gone with them.
Yeah, the only festival I did was with friends, and yeah, I never really kind of wanted to go, but they did, and so yeah, it was fine. I just wouldn't choose to do such a thing. I can think of better things to do. But yeah, that was my Easter weekend, and now we're just back into the thick of things.
This is how this is it. And then it's kind of like birthdays, tattoos in June, potentially.
Yeah, I've paid up front already, so I forget the date of it. Is it in
30th
June?
of
It
June?
might be in, I think it's towards the end of June, yeah, because
Mm.
Charlotte's birthday's at the beginning, and I didn't want it to interrupt that. I need to check when it is. But now, the way I've been able to like, have tattoos now, it doesn't really interrupt training. Like I used to really be like, oh, I got to deload for the days afterwards, and so I've got to plan it and whatever. Whereas now it's like, hey, if I have a rest day or I get a calf tattoo, I'll train my upper body the next day. I can pretty much get into lower body training if I'm smart about it the day after that. So they've not really impeded my ability to be able to continuing with my bodybuilding, which is really nice, because that was always something that was off-putting about getting tattoos, was like, I have to take time off. Whereas now it's like, oh no, I can keep putting my foot down, even though maybe it's like you said, at some points it's good to force yourself to pull back or be forced to.
So after you have this one in June, where would be the next place on your body? Is it still the shin?
This won't cover, like, this might cover a third of my calf, maybe a
Okay.
half. I doubt it will be as big as that. Kind of depends what he goes for, but typically it's only a single session. So it took about 4 sessions, which is like 4 lots of 6 to 8 hours to complete a whole calf. So I would probably need 3 to 4 at least sessions to get that whole calf done. So this is the first. And so I've got plenty of time to keep going on that calf. And then once that calf is done, I'm pretty much on pause until the foreseeable future, because the areas left, I don't think I'm willing to get tattooed for bodybuilding purposes. And then also just my personal preferences. The only places left that wouldn't impact bodybuilding is like my neck, face, areas of the glute that doesn't get shown, feet. But if I start going on my thighs, my back, my abdominals, my chest, upper arms, shoulders, they all have implications for hiding detail. So yeah, unfortunate, but it's okay. I've got plenty of time to finish off the calf.
I was going to ask you if you'd have a tattoo on your feet at all.
I never liked that idea. And I still don't know how I feel about it, because I've got them on the top of my hands. So it's not too dissimilar to that. But for whatever reason, feet doesn't appeal to me as much. They're so often covered. And for me, tattoos are always about, like, I want to be able to show them. Because, yeah, I mean, they're not for others, but I also want to see them. And you're wearing socks all the time, like, you can see it now and then. So yeah, feet wouldn't be a priority, but I would potentially consider it in future. I imagine it's quite painful as well, I was going to say.
Yeah, I think it would be, actually, because there's not much flesh there, and it's quite there's lots of nerve endings and sensors there. So yeah, it could be. But be interested if anyone's had their feet tattooed. Let us know in the comments. Was it painful or not?
It's funny, people have different experiences with these things as well, but I think it is one of the more painful areas. Should we get to questions, Mike?
Let's get. Do you know what? That was crossing my mind as well. That is a good segue into questions.
Let me just scroll and where are they? So I know we had some left from last time, and for some reason, I can't find. I had the question box up, and now I literally cannot see it.
Well, I think we answered last time Manji Machine's question, so it might be Gibos Fit, who's...
Yeah, I mean, the question box thing is gone on mine. I don't know how.
I think I've got them here.
Wait, found it. It's just had to scroll a lot. So go over the first question, Mike, sorry.
So I think the first question that we didn't get to, so today, the first question is by Cole_P_Warren. What is the lowest body fat percentage you think the average person can productively recomp?
So the way I think about this question is, what is your propensity to growing muscle? And there are several factors that lead you to be in a better position or higher growth potential. The higher your growth potential, the more likely you can recomp. So training age is probably the biggest influence here. So the more trained you are, the less likely you're going to recomp. The more optimal you are, or from going less optimal to more optimal, the more likely you can recomp, i.e. your training kind of sucks, your nutrition kind of sucks, and then you really dial it in. See this with a lot of clients, not to say their nutrition and training sucks, but we individualize it and we get it way more on point, they're way more consistent, so their ability to recomp suddenly really increases, their muscle gain potential really increases. And then genetics, of course, play a role. And then I do think body fat stores play a role. And really, you just want to be in a healthy body fat range where you can train really hard. So within your lower and upper intervention points of body fat. And then if you're towards the upper end, I think that does just lead to a slightly, but not much different, slightly better growth potential if you have a slightly larger fuel source available to be put towards recomping. So in terms of the lowest body fat, you think the average person can productively recomp. What's productively? That's subjective. I don't know if recomping for someone who is very well trained and doing a lot of things right is the route to go down. Just generally, it's not very efficient, so I wouldn't call that productive. Whereas someone who is really dialing things in and is less well trained, I think so long as they're within their range of body fat that they feel good and productive in the gym in, I think they can productively recomp there. For a lot of males, I guess that's going to be in and around like 15% body fat or slightly higher. Females, mid-20s, somewhere around there. Don't know if you think any differently, Mike, or you approach the question differently.
I don't think so. I think what you just said there in terms of we need to define what productive is so that we can then sort of direct that, because I think that's quite an important thing. Also, when we say figures like 15% body fat, I think that's also really hard because, you know, not all of us are going to have like, you know, a bod pod or a DEXA scan. And so we're just using, you know,
I wouldn't use those anyway.
No, exactly. So like, I think it's also a hard thing to objectively say where that is. But I think all of the other factors that you mentioned in terms of like, hey, we want to be in a body fat range where we can push really hard, get close proximity to failure, taking into account genetics, training age, etc. That's what's going to drive recomp more so than maybe some other factors.
Yeah, I think generally people, and I too often use it and just go with it in terms of body fat percentages. I just don't think it's very useful.
No.
Just generally, just like when I'm talking about 15%, I just mean you basically have some semblance of abs, some muscle separation,
Yes.
but no striations, no hard details. And then when you're nearer 20%, like you haven't really got any particular separation between muscle groups. You just look big and thick kind of thing. But again, that can look different person to person and all those sort of factors. And I think better is like what we mentioned is you're at body fat where you can train productively.
Yeah.
So long as you're there, I think you could have a productive recomp if you have lots of things in your favor for muscle gain potential.
I kind of also see it, and this actually it could tie in nicely to the next question, but it kind of also reminds me of when should one deload? And it's like, well, we're deloading when multiple factors are starting to drop off. Maybe we can't maintain performance in the gym any longer. Maybe our motivation to train is dipping. Maybe our sleep's starting to get affected. Maybe nutritionally or appetite is starting to get adversely affected. I think when we're starting to see multiple markers dropping off, whereas actually if multiple markers are still going really well, that means that, hey, we're in a productive zone to continue training. So I kind of feel that there's some similarities there as well.
I guess you're using that biofeedback and that similarity in terms of how to know you're at a productive body fat.
Yes.
As in, your appetite control is good, you're not food focused, you're sleeping well, you're training really well, you have good energy levels, all of those sort of things. Yeah.
Yeah. If you've got those biofeedback markers and the feedback from those markers is positive, that probably tells you you're in a good place to recomp.
We have more chance to, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Cool. So I get to the next question, which you might have already answered. I don't know. I haven't read it.
Let's go.
But it's from Afonso_Puga. And they have asked, how would you deload during a contest prep? Since muscle maintenance is of utmost importance, maybe keeping some hard sets makes sense. Thanks.
So where my first thought goes is it depends how deep into the contest prep a person is. So if someone is relatively early in their contest prep, I probably wouldn't. Well, in most cases, I don't think the deload would be treated differently from normal. I think early on in a contest prep, a deload would be approached very, very similar. Probably not adjusting nutrition overly different. If it was more deeper or later into the contest prep, again, training in how we're approaching the deload from a training perspective wouldn't differ significantly. It would only be maybe slight nutritional differences in maybe, okay, we're implementing a few more higher calorie or refeed days within that, but otherwise that everything kind of would remain very similar. But peak week would be a slightly different ball game, but that I think might be a slightly separate question.
Yeah, so I agree with you in terms of like deloading during contest prep. It's you have to think about what you're trying to do and achieve when you're deloading. It's to maintain fitness characteristics, hopefully, so some proficiency with technique and maintain muscle mass, and then we're trying to reduce fatigue. So the difference shouldn't really look too different from like an off season in terms of the way to do that is still the same. Because if you start having hard sets in there, are you really reducing fatigue as well as you could be and allowing for like a productive weeks upon weeks upon weeks of hard training again? I don't think you are. And the easy answer would be if you're reducing the muscle protein synthesis, the growth from a training perspective, then you want to help that by buffering it with a nutritional perspective. So obviously having high protein, which you've got already, but maybe reducing the calorie deficit is an easy fix where it's just like, hey, you remove the growth ignition from training as much. And so rather than being in a big calorie deficit, you can meet that kind of drop in MPS by increasing your calories to kind of cover your bases and eat around maintenance. And I think that's a fine strategy. Do I think that is necessary? Because ultimately, if you bring your calories up, you're then losing time dieting. And it's remembering the goal of the deload isn't to like lose body fat, it is to maintain muscle and also mitigate fatigue. So if you've got the time, then coming up to maintenance for a portion of that deload to help recovery, to help protect against muscle loss is wise. If you haven't got the time, do I think the stimulus from less hard training that is fatigue reducing is still sufficient enough to maintain muscle mass? I think it probably is, as you mentioned, at the start of a comp prep when you've got ample amounts of body fat. Whereas as you're getting leaner and leaner, it's riskier and riskier. You're playing with fire a little bit more at that point where a lot of things have to be in your favor to kind of hold on to that muscle because you've got so little body fat to liberate. So if you try and diet through it, it's going to be tough. So I think as you go through a contest prep, the deload strategy probably doesn't need to change, but the nutritional strategy surrounding the deload might. Where at the start of a contest prep, as you mentioned, Mike, you might not worry about having days at maintenance because the risk of muscle loss is so much lower due to the high levels of body fat. And then as you get deeper and deeper into things, diet fatigue builds up too, so it kind of is synergistic with this too, where it helps mitigate that, and the risk of muscle loss increases as your body fat stores go down. So having more days at maintenance as you're deeper into a contest prep makes sense if you can plan for it. So that's the way I like to think about it. So pretty much exactly as you described, but in a slightly different way.
I think you described it really nicely, actually. And one thing that came to my mind as you were saying is that also we're also assuming potentially that what is the length of the deload? Because if we're only deloading for 3 or 4 days, then again, if that's enough to drop fatigue, that shouldn't impact things too significantly. And as I experienced when we went through when I had a little bit of a dip during my fat loss phase, we had 4 days where we just had 4 days of refeeds. But that 4 days was enough to really just extend the training mesocycle significantly. So again, a deload, another variable is the length of time that you're deloading for. It doesn't need to be a week. It could be literally a few days. And that doesn't need to significantly affect anything.
Yeah. I used to be really like, if I'm deloading, it must be a week and I must bring on calories up to maintenance. It's like, again, that's the textbook. It's a good general recommendation. It's very safe. But in reality, it doesn't have to look like that. And I think the risks of muscle loss when you're still training, even like semi-hard, like you would during a deload, I think the risk of muscle loss is still pretty low until you start getting very lean. But at that point, you also reduce your calorie deficit to being a pretty small one. And if you're not training as much, your calorie deficit probably gets smaller too, and you're nearer maintenance just by default. So I think there is definitely room to manipulate your nutrition. I think it's a smart time to do it, but the risks can be overblown for like the muscle loss risk, I think, unless you're doing something really odd.
Yeah. And also a few minor points on that is like, one, a big lesson there is try to make sure that you always give yourself enough time. That's the biggest thing. But then also assessing the bodybuilder in front of you. So is this a person where they've got ample amounts of muscle mass and maybe could potentially, hey, it's not going to be a massive detriment if they lose a tiny little bit, maybe. Obviously, we don't want that, but hey, if it happened, it wouldn't be the end of the world. Equally, have we got someone where, hey, we really can't afford to lose any muscle mass? So in that case, we need to be more conservative with not risking any muscle loss and then go from there. So I think that, again, who's the individual in front of you, that will determine potentially your strategy with the deload.
Yeah, I think you come back to your first point of that time. Just build in some time to take some time away from dieting during your comp prep. Otherwise, you don't really want to be choosing like between losing muscle and losing fat. Like it's just like, it's like I really don't want to have to be put in that position. It feels so wrong to think, we're gonna just push through this diet, we might lose muscle, but you're so over fat and we haven't got the time. It's a poor trade-off, but opportunity costs exist.
Yeah, it feels like it's like, just throwing money to the wind. It's like, have it. But anyway,
cool.
But
next question.
Next question. So Gourmet Paul asks, how does it feel to play such an important role in the spread of information in our niche sports? There are very few resources like this.
Well, thank you, Paul. I appreciate that, because I think I'm not necessarily as aware that I do play such an important role. I would say or Revive Stronger as a whole, how does it feel? Feels great, I guess, in that sense. Like, that's really nice to know that people think that the podcast and the information we put out is important for people. And I do take it seriously in terms of the people I bring onto the podcast, the topics that we talk about. And I do think I have a responsibility for the information that I put out, but I kind of just feel that just generally as individuals, we should be careful with our words and not speak over confidently about topics and subjects that we don't have the reason to be that confident about. I'm very careful about the way I speak and my knowledge on various subjects. And similarly, that's why I like to bring on experts in the field to kind of go through these topics. But in a very selfish way, to put it this way, the people I bring on and the topics I dig into, it's not for you guys always. It's also for me. Like that's why the podcast really did start, was I wanted to learn. And I was like, I can also share this with a wider audience. Everyone can benefit from that. And it continues to be that way. It's subjects and topics I'm really interested in. I want to be my best bodybuilder, the best coach I can be. So I bring on people that will allow me to do that and have conversations surrounding that. And it's more of a big bonus that you guys can benefit from it. So yeah, it's great to know that Paul feels that way. I don't know if you have any comments on that, Mike.
But it's funny because it's very similar to personal development in some ways, because you could say like, oh, I'm trying to improve myself, and that's a selfish thing. But equally, by making yourself a better person, you're more likely to make better decisions, help others through being a better person. So yeah, it's a weird thing where even though it's a selfish pursuit to improve yourself, it ends up helping other people as well. So it's an interesting thing that I think. But the other thought also that came to my mind is that I think the sheer time that you've been doing it has really helped as well. Because I was speaking to Lawrence Grieve on the General Muscle podcast, and I can't remember now, but is it 10 years that you've been doing this, or 7 years?
The podcast hasn't quite been running 10 years. I think it's coming to maybe 8.
8 years. So if you think like people like myself and Lawrence, it's like we've almost grown up in some senses listening to that, and I think just through your sheer consistency and just staying in the game, that in and of itself has made a big impact. So yeah, I think it's cool.
Yeah, it's just nice. It's nice to know that it does play that role for people. And yeah, if my selfish pursuit can also help others, that's fantastic. And I just really appreciate all the listeners, and I appreciate the guests, importantly, willing to come on and discuss things. So yeah, it's great to see. I'll get to the next question if that's all right, Mike.
Yeah, let's go.
So Jesse_Benson. For protein oats, do you heat in the microwave or use hot water? When do you add protein? I tried in the microwave way, and it got a weird texture. Describe your protein oat recipe, Mike. Go.
So I have 2 methods. So the method for when I'm prepping food for the week and I'll have like protein oats just before I start my clinic work, is I call it the absorption method, where I basically...
You've named this.
Yes, this is important. You need to name the method. Is that you've got, basically, I put the oats in a Tupperware, and then I boil a kettle, and I put the boiling water in the oats, and I let the oats absorb it. So it's effectively like overnight oats in a sense. And then what I'll do is I'll reheat it, add a tiny little bit of water, and put the protein powder in it, and then it becomes nice and the normal consistency. But then the second method is the normal method, where I just oats, water, microwave, and then when it comes out, stir in the protein and then let it... And I've taken this from you, Steve. I then let it sit for a little bit so that it has the nice caked on top surface, and then it's still soft and gooey underneath. That is the winner.
Skin on top. You can't beat that skin on top. Is good. That
it's
texture.
True.
I'm all about my textures. So your second method is exactly how I do it. So I cook my oats and then I add the protein powder in. And the key is not using too much water, because that can mean that if it's still liquidy at that point, you're screwed. You want it to be like a thick texture at that point. Let it settle a little bit. It'll cool. It'll get a skin on top, and it'll like thicken up to being like almost like a... It depends how much fluid you use, but it can be like a bit like a flapjacky type of, like, quite dense. But yeah, I use that method. If you cook the oats and the whey can harden up and not be a particularly nice texture. I find it does go thicker and hard almost, which is it actually basically what you're doing is, if anyone's done like a mug cake, you basically cook them. You're basically doing that with your oats in it, but you tend to maybe overcook it. It becomes dry, and I tend to find it's not as tasty. It loses its flavor if you do that. So I tend to recommend, cook your oats, make sure they're thick, add the whey in, and then it should thicken up. It can vary protein powder like dependent. If you do like a whey isolate, sometimes that's too thin in for itself. If you've got thick protein powder that makes thick shakes, it will make a thick protein oats. But if you've got a runny protein powder, it might make the oats even more runny for whatever reason. The way it kind of the chemicals in there, they just won't thicken up. So I've actually come to, Mike, using a combination of casein protein powder, because that gets very thick, with whey or like a plant-based protein powder, and that gets a really thick texture, which I enjoy. That's what I've been doing.
Do you still have croats? Or
yes, I still cook the cream of rice into it as well. That adds like a bit of a, I don't know what it does change the texture ever so nicely. Like I just like what that does, and keeps my fiber in check.
What's the acronym when you add cauliflower to croats?
I have no idea. I've never done that.
Colots.
I'm not sure I would. I think I'd just end up chopping out the cream of rice, and then I'd start reducing my oats and adding cauliflower. I don't think I'd ever do cauliflower, cream of rice, and oats. In fact, I haven't done cauliflower oats in years, so I don't know if this is ever going to come back.
Croats, the ultimate like fluff.
I'm not sure. I think cauliflower probably takes away from it versus adding to it.
Yeah, definitely.
But for thick protein oats, casein protein powder, it just globulates and gets thick. So if you like that, then especially if you're dieting, it's a big win. Or if you want just thicker oats, you can do like a 50-50 whey and casein. That works really well.
I do find that vegan protein powders always tend to be on the thicker side. So, and it's kind of like that halfway where it's maybe not quite as thick as casein, but it's definitely always thicker than whey. So vegan's quite a nice halfway. And most vegan protein, they used to taste very earthy, but now on the whole, vegan protein powders are pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I actually prefer, because I've got so much protein powder at the moment, because I did some bits with PhD we talked about. My morning one, I use whey and casein, and then my one post-workout, I do their plant-based one and the casein. I prefer the plant-based one because the texture it gives is even better. So yeah, for protein oats, I've heard that from a lot of people. Plant-based protein powders work super well in protein oats for that reason.
Do you have question? Sorry. Do you have different flavors for all of those?
Yeah, I do.
What's your favorite flavor?
I mean, at the moment, I'm going between Belgian chocolate and salted caramel. So that's what I've got. But in terms of my favorite overall flavor, I think the favorite that I've had in recent times was like a basic Kinder Bueno flavor. White chocolate hazelnut. That was really good.
Was that from
How about
Perform?
you? It was, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's banging. Blah, blah. It's not coming to my head, but it's not my favorite. But I would say, just out of sheer novelty, I had a lemon cheesecake flavor recently, and
I've got that downstairs.
Have you?
Mm-hmm.
It's nice.
It's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the ones that are distinct flavors. Like if they're like lots of chocolate ones, I find I wouldn't know if it was chocolate brownie or Belgian chocolate or whatever it is. They just all go into like the same. Whereas if it's like, that's lemon. That's lemon cheesecake. I like that. So that's good. Mike, I'm going to ask you this next question because I'm going to go for a quick toilet break and come back. That's the other thing I do. I just ate my post-workout. I also drink loads of water with it, and then it makes me really need the loo. It's terrible timing for a podcast. But Dr. Jared Rice. So Jared has asked, is there any benefit in training for strength if hypertrophy is the main goal, i.e. like adding a single meso of strength-focused training?
Okay, so thanks as always for the question, Dr. Jared. Appreciate you, and I also appreciate your comments because sometimes you kind of get back to us with your feedback. So I always appreciate it and look forward to reading your comments. But so I think from where you're coming from is some people might argue that some strength phases within kind of a macro cycle of hypertrophy could be beneficial because you're kind of almost increasing your top end and you're increasing your ability to handle higher loads, and therefore in the longer term your overall volume could be greater, if I'm getting that argument correctly. However, I personally, from what I currently know, I don't think there's an advantage to having those strength specific phases, because ultimately, as long as you're progressively overloading in a hypertrophic rep range, then you're still essentially progressing your strength, but you're not taking away from hypertrophy. Whereas if you're just focusing exclusively on strength, that's time you're missing from potentially gaining muscle. So I don't necessarily think, if I'm answering this question correctly, I don't think there's a massive benefit to having a strength-specific phase for hypertrophy training.
My thoughts align with yours. Yeah, I don't think... I actually did an article on this a while back where it was like, the bigger the base, the bigger the like pyramid or something along those lines. Whereas like strength can be the base, the foundation to then grow from. So being stronger then allows you to use heavier loads during your hypertrophy sessions, and so now that's leading to more growth. But now we know more about what drives hypertrophy. It isn't so much the load, but it's that proximity to failure and doing sufficient total set volume. And so actually being stronger, you could argue, is going to fatigue you more, means that you can't do as much, and maybe it's negative. I'm not going to go as far as saying doing a strength block would be negative to your hypertrophy, but I don't think it's additive. And also strength, the more data we're getting about it, they're actually very different. Like I just had Jake Remmett on the podcast, and he was talking about the set volume required to like maximize strength within a single workout. And basically, once you get to 2 sets within a single workout, anything more than that, we can't be confident you're getting any stronger. Like there's a 50% chance you are, 50% chance you aren't. Whereas for hypertrophy, it's like it was 11 sets. So clearly they're very different in terms of the way you approach training. Strength seems to be very skill, neurological, that sort of thing. So higher frequencies, lower volumes. Whereas for hypertrophy, it's like very volume driven, proximity to failure driven. Actually going lower in reps probably doesn't help hypertrophy because it seems to be inefficient for accumulating volume. So yeah, I don't think, unless someone has a particular reason they want to do a strength block, you need to for hypertrophy, and actually you'd grow more just by consistently doing specific things that are hypertrophy. That's at least, I think we're both on the same page there.
Definitely. Yeah, totally agree.
Last question of this lot.
Yeah, so I'll ask this one. So Xander Fever 2021 asks, do you have an app or computer program for progress photo comparisons?
So I guess we use Google Drive, and if you see me on my story doing it, typically I'm just taking a photo of my screen, and I have 2 like separate tabs where I'm looking at photos side by side. So I do nothing fancy there. If it's on my phone, I use, what is it? Layout. I don't know what, photo booth layout, but I rarely use that. And actually I use Canva most of the time because then I can overlay the Revive Stronger logo. So basically Canva and Google Drive. I don't know if you've used anything else, Mike.
No, I've never used anything else. I'm exactly the same. Oh, right.
Then we can get to this week's questions. We're going to skip Jared because although that said 3 likes, maybe we should get to Jared's.
So Jared Rice asks, what are common and uncommon symptoms of needing a deload? With yourself, clients, is dysregulated hunger on the list?
So you named a bunch of them already, Mike. So motivation to train, sleep disrupted, energy levels low, performance plateauing or dipping, niggles or injuries cropping up. Those are all probably some of the big ones. Hunger, I find super hit and miss. So people have different stress responses to hunger. Some people, when they're stressed, get very hungry. Other people don't get hungry at all. So for me, when I'm stressed, like if I get anxiety, I don't want to eat at all. In fact, my body seems to want to get rid of stuff. I get nervous poos, that sort of thing. Whereas other people I know, they stress eat and they want to eat. So the textbook answer is, if you're overreaching, hunger tends to be dysregulated in a negative sense where it's down, but I tend to find it be quite mixed. I don't know what your experience is, Mike. So it's something I don't tend to ask because it doesn't seem to be informative. It's impacted by a multitude of factors too.
I would echo that in the sense that I just don't find I don't find any value from it, because stress also fluctuates where so a client could be really stressed from work or something else that's going on in their life which is affecting their appetite, and like you said, Steve, it's so different from person to person in terms of some people overeat, some people don't eat at all, and it's hard to differentiate, is this stress from their lifestyle, or is it or is there a contributing element from where they are in their mesocycle? And I can't be confident in attributing it to that. So far, I've never had appetite as a strong indicator for someone needing to deload.
Yeah, I used to ask it that and digestion because I do think they're related to stress, but I haven't found those answers helpful, so I don't anymore. So
yeah,
I'll ask you the next question from Tristan's Young, and they asked, starting prep myself and need to know the truth. What's the best Ninja Creamy recipe? So you can't answer this, Mike, because you haven't got Ninja Creamy yet. I imagine you're going to get one at some point.
When I move in, it's coming. It is coming.
Will you go deluxe or standard?
What does deluxe do? Is it just bigger?
It's bigger, so the portion size can be bigger, which I do think is useful in an off-season in particular. That could be useful. And it just gives you that freedom, actually. If you want to make it bigger, you can. If you want to make it smaller, you can. Whereas I'm like, I could make it smaller, but it'll be quite small at that point. So in hindsight, I'd go deluxe. It has a few other settings. I don't know if I'd use them because all I use is light ice cream. I haven't varied other things. And I can't honestly say, he asked, what did he say? What's the best recipe?
Yeah.
I just haven't moved away from, as we spoke about before, my nutrition is like, I'm very functional. Once I hit something that just works, I stick with it. So I'm still 250 mils of skim milk. I actually use Bob, his milk. Bob is a brand, and basically they do something to treat the milk so it lasts longer and also tastes more like semi-skimmed milk. And I use it not because of the semi-skim thing, although that probably helps, but because it lasts longer, because I don't get through it that quickly and I buy like a big thing. So I don't want it to go off. Anyway, 250 mils of skim milk. Then at the moment, I'm doing 20 grams of casein, 10 grams of whey. That seems to get a better, thicker consistency than just using whey. And then I do 80 grams of banana. So that's and then I will actually add some salt, a little bit of additional sweetener, and I might top it off so that it's like at the top freeze line, and then freeze that. And then I just put it through typically one light ice cream round and it's done. Sometimes I'll mix in some nuts or some like cereal or something like that. But at the moment, I've just tended to leave it as that. I try not to jazz it up too much because something I'm aware of, we've spoken about this, Mike, is backloading too many calories. And so I don't want to make it too calorie dense. I just want a nice proteiny treat at the end of the day. So that comes in at like 250 calories or something around that. So it's not bad at all. Gets me 1 of my 5 a day. So yeah, that's been my go-to recipe at least. I would love to know if listeners have Ninja Creamies, what's your go-to recipe method? Let us know in the comments because I think that would be useful, not just for me, but for anyone looking on.
Definitely. Emoji ice cream and then write down your recipe. But I would also add that someone who is probably one of the best people to go to for this is Max Coleman. Because if you follow him on Instagram, he just has some mad recipes. He has like a macaroni and cheese Ninja Creamy recipe on there. So I think if you look at his profile, you'll probably find some killer recipes there.
You're a fan of macaroni and cheese, right?
Yeah, I am.
After you had it in New York, that massive portion, I still look at the photos and I'm like, dude, that's pig mass right there.
It was, I was pretty full. To be honest, I wasn't expecting it to be that big, but it was huge. It was thick.
Yeah, it was massive.
I loved it though.
I'll ask you the next question as well, because that was more me. So Teddy Gross _official asks, let's assume one is following a balanced bodybuilding program since day one. When do you start adjusting the programming around weak points?
So So I think it's, again, it comes back to, okay, right. Um, who's the individual? Is when you're assessing their physique in terms of their progress pictures, is there obvious genetic, like, hey, body parts are really accelerating ahead of others? And I think if that is looking to be the case, then that's when you'd probably want to start to put your emphasis more in other areas. And I think you'd kind of also want to take that on board with, their training biofeedback as well, potentially. But it's more going off of, right, visually, how are they looking? Also, I think a really important point here is this person looking to compete? What are their goals? Because if you've got a person who never wants to compete in bodybuilding, and maybe their arms are growing really well, and maybe they are growing at a rate quicker than other body parts, but all they want is to go to the beach and have massive arms, then you leave it as it is. So I think what are their goals? If we're assuming that they're going to be going to they want to compete in bodybuilding, then you again assess photos, you manipulate it accordingly, and kind of go from there.
Yeah, I love that you came back to that point of what is the person's goals, because that's the first thought that came to my mind was, well, actually, the first thought of my mind was very bodybuilder specific. So like, oh, they're stepping on stage as a bodybuilder, but if they're not, then it completely depends on their goals. Like they might have weaknesses that for them they don't care about, like you said, whereas they might have ambitions that are different to being a balanced bodybuilder. What I would say for that person who wants to consider stepping on stage and therefore needs a balanced physique, and say they're a bodybuilder, or that person who might want to step on stage or they just don't want to have like any outstanding weaknesses, I'd say once you're an intermediate, so once you've been training probably a good 3 to 5 years seriously, I think then you can start to think about, do I have weaknesses on my physique or not? Before that point, to put it in the nicest way possible, which isn't very nice, everything's weak. So you just need to bring up everything. You can't like think that, oh, I need to work on this because it's weak or whatever. But at the same time, you might have things that you just want to really focus on. And I think that's fine too. Like I think if you try and divide it up too much and overthink this question, it's just not going to be helpful overall. So I would say if you have weaknesses that you want to bring up, go ahead. If everything's weak, focus on everything. Probably 3 to 5 years is a good amount of time to invest on just holistic everything come up, and then you can start focusing a bit more as a bodybuilder or someone who just wants a well-balanced physique. But if you don't care for that, that's not your goal, then hey, have it. Focus on the areas you really want to bring up versus caring about, I don't know, legs. Like I have clients who they just don't care about like leg development, for example. So we do enough where it grows at maybe what you'd call a minimum effective volume, but we focus on other things, and that's totally cool with me. Yeah, I think that's a fine thing to do. With time for one more question, do you think?
Yeah, let's go. So, Crying Heart 5 asks, athletes debate whether or not to share their journey or comp prep versus keeping it more private. Steve, what were the pros and cons of you sharing?
I'd also love your perspective on this, Mike. So I obviously talked to Peter Fitchen about his comp prep, and he kept it under wraps the entire time. And if I look at someone like an AJ Morris, for example, he's sharing his process, but he's not sharing his physique. He's wrapped up when he's training. He hasn't done any physique shots that are publicly available, at least. And so that obviously is just, it's a step. Then you've got someone like me, rather, who shares all their process the whole way and shares the physique on a regular basis. And so I think there isn't one right way to do it at all as an athlete. It's what jives with you. For me personally, I love just being an open book. I love talking publicly about what I'm doing. I find I really benefit from those interactions with people. It keeps me fired up. And like I take photo, like if you take a photo of your physique and you're like, oh, that's awesome. And you're just like, it's all good. And you just are fine with it just with you, great. But if you take a photo of your physique and you're like, man, I would just want to put that live in public. Like it just excites me to be able to do that. Then you probably got kind of your answer there, I think. Like when I do it, if I get a really cool fucking gnarly shot, I'm just like, yeah, I want to put that on my story. I'm well proud of that. That's awesome. I want to share my process. Whereas, yeah, other people might just want to keep it to themselves more so. It's similar to like your life in general. Like there are people out there on social media who share very little of their life, barely anything. You don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. For me, I share bits. I share that I have a dog. I share, like, I've got my partner, Charlotte. I share bits and pieces of what we do, but certainly not in-depth stuff about the ins and outs of our relationship, or I don't know, finances and all those sort of aspects of family life. Like, I have sisters, but I don't really share much about that. And that's my comfort level with that. So I think everyone just has to find their sweet spot with it. And if you ever find that, for example, you took that gnarly shot, you put it on social media, and then you got feedback that then made you feel negative about it, it impacted your process, then maybe you want to draw back and not share as much. It depends person to person, I think. So yeah, I'd love to hear your feelings surrounding that, Mike, and how you felt about the amount that you shared your process.
I really liked what you said about the sweet spot, because that was probably the one thing which I'm reflecting on in terms of where my sweet spot is. Because if anyone sees me on social media, they'll probably start to pick up that I actually don't share a lot about my physique. I don't often, if I was to compare myself to you, Steve, like, you don't see me doing lots of kind of selfies with my top off or anything like that. And I think there's an element of that which is outside of my comfort zone. And if I'm being honest, it's because I'm afraid of being judged and I'm afraid of being criticized. And I think probably for me, going into my next prep, it's something I need to do more of in order to get over that fear. So I think sometimes from one season to another, some people might do one thing and do a little bit more. They might share a little bit more one season, a little bit less the other season, because they're trying to find that sweet spot for them, I think. So I think, and obviously when I competed in 2023, that was the very first season that I was doing. So, and I was still trying to get better at Instagram anyway. And you were encouraging me just to, like, Mike, just start sharing stuff. So I think there was an element of that, and I was still finding my feet on Instagram. So to answer your question, Steve, I think also, sorry, one final point. I was talking to Colby Souza about this, and he's also reluctant sometimes to share things on social media because, again, he's a bit afraid of that judgment and comparison. But what he's been finding is that people like us, we take so much value from that because we're getting insights about to them as people. We can relate a lot to some of the challenges that they go through. We can relate to their physique. So it's about sometimes, hey, if we're looking to add value, actually being a bit vulnerable and sharing our physique, sharing our processes, as uncomfortable as that feels, people relate to that, and that really helps, that relatability factor. So yeah, I think those were things that stood out. So coming back to answering the question, I think I am looking to share more of my physique, but again, within, I don't know how much of that is. I don't know where my sweet spot is, and that's what I'm going to be experimenting with going forwards into the next time I compete.
Yeah, I think it's very individual, and it might change over time, as you said there, Mike. From the get-go, I shared my first comp prep. I vlogged it, and I vlogged and shared every single one from there because it just comes naturally. Like, I want an outlet. I want people to talk to about it, because I imagine for some people, if they train at like a Ultraflex in Rotherham and they're surrounded by bodybuilders and they can talk to everyone about their preps and process and bits and pieces, then they might already have that outlet there. But for me, I've never had anyone in my close proximity that's like been that interested and want to talk about it. So I quite like documenting it and putting it out there. And over time, you do grow thicker skin too, where people will critique your process or they critique your physique or what have you. But as you develop thicker skin and get more confident in what you're doing, it gets better and better. And you do see that positive feedback where people actually find a lot of value in it. What I will say is, though, I certainly, as a competitor, bodybuilding is so selfish, and I think it should be. I wouldn't go and have your social media strategy and your sharing strategy surrounded about whether or not it's going to help other people, or if it's a business, like it's going to grow the business or what have you. I would like to think most people do bodybuilding for themselves. And so I'd always center it around that. So you might think, oh, I should share my process because it's going to help so many other people. I'm like, yeah, but I mean, you can still add value to people without doing things that take away from you and your enjoyment from it. So it might be an AJ Morris approach where it's, I'm not going to share my physique because I want to keep that to myself. And that maybe brings on negatives that aren't worth it to me, but I do want to add value to my audience. People look up to me, so I'm going to share my process. So I think everyone just has to navigate it the way they like to and go about it that way. The only time I've not shared things, and what I will say is towards the end of prep, when you're in the thick of things, I share less. That definitely happened where I just had to focus. I just had to get my foot down. I had to dig and stuff got hard. And I didn't feel bad about that. So I definitely just auto-regulate it based off like where I'm at in the process and how I'm feeling. And I think that's completely fine. Like I said, I bring it back to being selfish. It's for you. You're stepping on stage for you, no one else. So do what feels right to you and helps you in the process versus doing it for others, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And one thing I wanted to touch on what you said was about one of the things that you said was how you talked about kind of being critiqued a little bit or not being afraid of being critiqued. But actually, whilst some people might think, oh, it's a negative thing to be criticized, actually, it's a really positive thing because even if you're being criticized, you learn so much faster because then you think, right, is there any value to the criticism that they're saying? And if there is, then that helps you learn better because then you can just adjust and make progress. Because if you said something like, oh, I'm doing, forced eccentric negative failure drop set something, and they're like, hey, is that really the most efficient way of getting hypertrophy? And then you're like, oh, maybe not. Maybe there's a bit of an injury risk there or whatever. And it's like, okay, perfect. We've dodged an injury. I've learned. I'm making faster progress now as a result. So I think there's such a, I think that's such a strength to not be afraid of criticism, but then questioning that criticism. Is it valid? Is there any validity to this criticism? Again, that takes maturity, it takes experience and knowledge, etc. But yeah, I think that's a super strength to not be afraid to be criticized.
Takes time as well, though. And especially if you find it knocks you off or dampens your confidence, that's something you have to be careful with. But I think your example is a great way of when criticism can be helpful. When it's harmful is like, you look skinny, you look shit, like you look better 5 weeks ago, like you, so on and so forth. And that can just wear on you. And then that's when you might just go, hey, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to go incognito mode, not share the rest of this and just show them when I hit the stage because people don't know the context behind the process. And so then they might give you feedback that is just wholly unhelpful.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think knowing that is really important for sure.
Absolutely. Cool. So I think we got through a good chunk of questions and we have some left for next week and we'll ask for some more.
Yeah.
On that note, as a reminder, guys, if you haven't been listening and you haven't clued in, questions, where do you ask? You go to Instagram, Revive Stronger, the Hypertrophic Time Chamber, which if you click my profile, you'll be able to join the group. Trust me, I don't spam in there. I share tidbits and behind the scenes things and just give you the lowdown of like the even discounts to the seminar, for example, you can find in there. And I request questions every week. So you can ask in there and it's just a great group of people. And I turn comments off. So it's like people aren't spammy in there all the time. It's literally just me giving you updates and it'll be fantastic to have you in there. If you have listened this long, please do subscribe, give us a comment, let us know your Ninja Creamy recipe. That'd be fantastic. If you haven't got a Ninja Creamy recipe, give us a ice cream emoji like Mike said. And definitely subscribe, share with anyone, give us a review if you're listening over on Spotify. I know most of you are over on YouTube, so a comment and a thumbs up would be grateful, and a subscribe if you haven't yet. So that's everything from me, Mike. Anything on your end?
Nothing from me. Only, how's the Tutti Frutti Fanta?
Haven't had it yet.
Okay.
So
Next time.
I only bought it yesterday, and Charlotte wanted to try it together because she was going to have it yesterday. So I've saved it to see if we might have it this evening, or maybe I'll have it on the weekend. But I'm excited to try because Tutti Frutti, it can be a bit hit and miss, but if they do it well, I'm very skeptical of these limited edition flavors, but let's see.
There you go. You'll have to let us know next week.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thanks, guys.